Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Something kind of interesting happened to me not too long ago. I was going through some of the items that I have on my shelf, just going through some of the stuff in my collection. I was actually looking for one of my modules that I felt that or fear that I had misplaced. And as I was going through, I ended up discovering something on my shelf that I completely forgot that I actually ever came into possession of. So a couple years ago, a friend of mine was getting ready to move out of the province, and he used to own his own game store. He's actually, became one of my closest friends, and I've got a lot of my D&D stuff, especially during the 3.5 days. Pretty much everything I bought was from his store before it ended up closing down. But as he was getting ready to move, he wanted to just get rid of some of his stuff, basically. He's the person that I got the 6 of the 7 Zero Edition AD or Zero Edition D&D books from, the little white booklets. And there's also a bunch of other stuff that I ended up buying as well. So as I was going through, like I said, I just kind of took everything that that I had in the box that I got from, and just kind of threw it on the shelves. But there was one thing I actually honestly forgot that I had in that, and that was the booklet Campaign Guide to Undermountain. So this is for 2nd edition AD&D Forgotten Realms. This was part of a box set, so I don't have the complete box set, unfortunately. It's missing, the maps and stuff like that, but I still have the campaign guide, which is actually pretty cool. And again, I completely forgot that I had this as I was going through, and I was trying to find, it was the Dungeon of Death module, which is almost ironic because it was a 2nd edition AD&D Forgotten Realms adventure I was looking for, and I found this. So what's actually pretty cool about this is it has a whole bunch of information on Undermountain, as well as things like the Yawning Portal. It talks about, you see it kind of in bold there. So I just thought that was actually kind of cool, but this isn't the only thing that I ended up discovering through, it was probably couple of weeks after this. I decided to go through the rest of the box that I got from him, which was mainly filled with like old copies of Dragon and Dungeon magazines. And the purpose for that is I want to weed out the duplicates that I have, because there were some that he had in there that I already owned. So I plan on doing something with those. So as I was going through, and actually before I get to that, something else that I've recently been trying to find that I fear I've misplaced was my Map of the Forgotten Realms that came with my 3rd edition campaign setting booklet. Or not booklet, but my hardcover 3rd edition Forgotten Realms campaign setting. I know the map's here somewhere. It's just a matter of it probably got tucked in with some other papers and put away somewhere. But even though I was trying to find that, what I didn't realize that I had, that I got from my friend, were the 4 issues of Dragon magazine that contains the Forgotten Realms map. Now I figured that a lot of these probably would have been, anything that was inside probably would have been taken out. However, if you look here, you can actually see that all 4 pieces of the map are actually still in the magazine and have not been removed. And as far as I know, this is pretty much the exact same map that they have in the campaign setting booklet, only it's larger and it's in sections. So I haven't taken them out yet. I probably will do that at some point. I don't really want to do that now on camera, but I've actually got all 4, which is pretty crazy. So I never thought I would own these, because all of these issues came before I was buying them, and I figured that even if I had them in my collection because I got them from my friend, I figured that the maps would have been already pulled out and in his own personal collection. But all 4 of them are in here, which is just pretty awesome. So at some point I will take those out and just kind of show them all off in video. I'm hoping to find my one that came in the campaign setting book, just so I can kind of compare and see if there are any differences between the two, aside from the size. So that was pretty cool. So those are 2 really interesting settings, and both of them are Forgotten Realms based. However, the third one, the last thing that I want to show off, is just something that I think is really cool, and I never would have thought that I'd ever have something like this. But inside, some of the old issues of Dragon that he had were actually back from, the 80s and early 90s, including a couple of them that actually came out prior to the release of second edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And inside of one of those magazines was a booklet that you can actually remove. So it was stapled in. You had to like bend the staples out, a few of them, and then pull this out and fold the staples back in. But this is a preview for second edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So, for example, this is what the second edition AD&D Player's Handbook, the original Player's Handbook, looked like. I don't have this version. I do have this DMG, and I do have some of the one of the binders for the Monsters Compendium. But I don't think it has the same artwork. But anyway, so I thought this was really cool. But what this is it was basically an interview with one of the designers. And it goes over information on changes from first edition AD&D to second edition AD&D, which is really cool. It's actually really interesting to see some of the design philosophies that kind of went into this. Now, one of the things, and I don't know exactly where it is, but there was something in here that I thought was kind of interesting in some of the phrasing that they ended up coming up with. But I'll probably do a separate video looking at this a little bit more closely. But there's an interesting little bit of foreshadowing with some of like the future editions and how the design philosophies kind of behind them, for example, could lead to fans not being on board, essentially. And that's kind of what ended up happening when 4th edition came out, and I wish I knew exactly where that line was. I'm not going to go searching for it right now, simply because I don't want to waste time kind of trying to read through it. But again, this is something that's really cool. It previews 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. And in addition to just talking about some of the things, like it actually shows off some of the charts. Like, for example, they expanded some things with the ability scores. So they added things to it when it comes to the 2nd edition AD&D version of strength versus the 1st edition. So it added like the maximum press that you can use. It discusses how they got rid of the comeliness score, which was not really all that particularly useful. And it goes over some of the information for the classes, which is, again, something that I think is really cool. And it just, it goes into a lot of detail. It's really interesting, again, just to have this in my collection, because I didn't even know about this being like a separate booklet. I figured that if they would have had something in Dragon Magazine about 2nd edition, that would have probably just been a series of articles. But this is its own separate booklet, which is really awesome. And I wanted to see what kind of value something like this would have. Not that I ever plan on parting with it, because that certainly would not happen. I mean, here we have non-weapon proficiencies, which was brand new in 2nd edition, which again is really cool. But I just wanted to know if something like this is, if there was actually a demand for it, or if there's anybody that was really, saying that they had this and selling it type of thing. So I went on eBay and I found 2 separate listings for these booklets, and they were both around the $30 to $40 range, which is again kind of crazy, but this is just such a cool thing to have. It's just so interesting to see, them talking about the differences between 1st edition and 2nd edition AD&D. It's just a really cool thing. It's probably one of the items that I would consider to now be, like, I don't want to say the pride of my collection, but this is something that is definitely a major part of my collection now, because it's just such a cool thing to have. And again, it's something that I had no idea that I've owned. Like, I've had all of these things for the last 2 years, almost 3 years now, I think, at this point. And it's just so crazy to think that I was sitting on these things without even really realizing that I had them. To have the 4-piece poster map of the Forgotten Realms campaign setting, to have the campaign guide to Undermountain, and to have a preview to introduce the concepts that were changing from 1st edition to 2nd edition AD&D is just something that it's almost mind-blowing that, again, these have all been sitting in a box in my apartment or in my home for a couple of years. So I'm really glad that I finally decided to really kind of dig through that box. And I owe it all to going through on my shelf and finding this. Because finding this booklet made me want to go back and see if I had other hidden treasures, basically, in my collection. So I just wanted to share that with you guys, because I thought it was something that was really kind of cool, and something that made me wish that I probably should have, gone through all the stuff that I had, years sooner. But anyway, again, I just wanted to kind of share this with you guys, and let me know in the comments if you've ever bought something in bulk for your collection and found stuff in there that you weren't expecting, because I think that's kind of interesting if that's the case. So anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.